3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasing the Racing. It almost feels a bit odd just me and you, because we've been that used to having guests in here. It's actually the first recording that we've done where it's just me and you. And obviously we've had
the good old days, Chrissy. Like the good old days.
Got the slideshow in the background there with all of our memories from over the last year or so. But yeah,
we've come a long way from the Doggin campsite that was on your driveway.
Did I say this is episode 58?
I have no idea. I don't think I have. This is totally turning into a blur. I'll tell you what though, is these new mics. I know it's obviously a podcast and people can't see what we're seeing. Obviously, you can get on the YouTube side of things and soak up the ambience. But these are mental, mate. These are mental. I don't know what the sound quality. I can considerably hear myself. Something that I should have done years ago. Start listening before I start speaking, which is a new skill.
Yeah. So big thank you to our patrons. We've invested in some new equipment, so we've got a new recorder and some new microphones.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Honestly, thank you. Like you say, thank you so much to all our patrons. This is hellish good stuff.
So later on in this podcast, we're going to be joined by the Mackenzie brothers, and we've managed to set it up so that every person's got a microphone. So in the past, where we've had to share microphones, it's a bit a step in the right direction, I think.
But you see, typically, I really hope this interview turns out well, because we're using the microphones backwards now. We didn't even try them out. We're just like, right, give that a go and see what happens. So it's going to be good. But the crack was phenomenal, mind.
I tell you what, before we go, you've sorted out a sponsor this week, haven't you?
No, I tell you what, actually, Fraser, who's he's kind of, no, he is family. It's loose family. I don't know. You know your family tree a fair bit better than me. Now, my cousin got married to Fraser's daughter. So Daniel's my cousin. So what does that make? What does that make? Alex, his daughter.
A loose relative.
A loose. No, hold on. That's terrible. I love it. This is sponsoring us, and we're just shouting everyone's loose. This is going very professional. But no, Fraser, thank you so much for getting in touch. He's a big bike fan himself. He's actually an ex-police force officer on the bike side of things. But then we used to have a division in the northeast for bike policemen, and it got shut down. He knows all that crack, but we'll have to get him on to get the slight governmental details. But no, you crack on, son, for this episode.
Based in Newcastle upon Tyne, the shop was acquired in 1984 by present owner Paul Hamilton, and is still the northeast premier Piaggio. Is that Piaggio dealer? Motec prides themselves on being a friendly, family-run business offering excellent advice and after-sales care. Paul and his family hold a wealth of knowledge and experience and have won many awards over the years for outstanding sales and after-sales care. Motec have recently expanded and developed a brand new showroom and workshop stocked with the latest tooling and diagnosis equipment. They offer facilities to rival any in the northeast, stocking a full range of Piaggio, Vespa, Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, and Gilero scooters and motorcycles. Additionally, they also sell the full range of Royal Alloy, Sim, Lambretta, Mondial, and Benelli motorcycles and scooters. Part exchange for other makes are welcome. Their new clothing area stocks a large range of clothing and accessories to suit any rider, whilst their fantastic range of motorcycles can be delivered anywhere in the country. What better way to socially distance yourself than by going to work on a new motorcycle with up to 5 years warranty for peace of mind? You can find them on Facebook or the internet, www.mo-tech.co.uk, or the email address info@mo-tech.co.uk, or why not give them a call on 0191 265 9793, and that's it. So massive thank you to is it Paul Hamilton?
Yeah, Paul.
Massive thanks to Paul for sponsoring the show.
Well, I went to the shop and it is absolutely brilliant. I tell you what, the collection on the Vespa, because I had the Rockers and Mod era, and these lads have just got every bike, every collectible on the scooter side. It's actually known in the northeast as the scooter shop. Now there are a few around the area with the same name kind of thing, so the Motec, but these lads are the legit ones. So thank you so much, and we've actually got a giveaway from them. It's a battery saver pack, so we'll have to do like a retweet competition, but please make sure you give their page a like, have a look at the websites. They've got some terrific deals on as far as what's the word? What's the finance deals for getting new bikes and everything? But no, they're definitely worth a visit. Definitely worth a visit.
I think
good coffee as well. Good coffee.
The whole motorcycling industry could take a bit of a lift at the moment with the whole social distancing rules. People are wanting to get away from obviously public transport.
Their wives.
Public transport is very very compact, especially no tubes, buses, that type of thing. And with concerns over the coronavirus and socially distancing, obviously there's no better way than being totally isolated with a helmet, gloves, and on a motorbike. So hopefully for our sport and
community, we're a community, Chrissy. We're a community,
so we'll be growing. So silver linings and all that, but. Anyway, we're going to be joined by the Mackenzie brothers with a pre-recorded interview. Went down at the weekend, and what a laugh we had. We were there for maybe about an hour and a half, and it
was meant for us. It was probably too long for them. So
and as well as that, we also played a little game at the end, which we'll be sticking on the YouTube channel. Which
was a proper laugh.
It was the first time we've tried that, and I think it was a real good success. So maybe for other brothers and like maybe family members, we'll maybe introduce that again.
There we go.
But anyway,
hey, hold on before we get going. You're looking particularly smart. Are you been back at work or something like that for a change?
A bit of training today, so I got.
Hold on. Bike training or work training?
Work training for
details, Chris.
With the day job, the teaching. So I back. But I think the schools are like reopening sometime soon, so I'll be getting back to some sort of normality. Although, like you pointed out earlier, what's normal these days?
There is nothing normal, especially on this podcast.
But anyway,
nothing normal.
What's the crack? You been up to much like this week?
No, I've been very lucky. I've been racing for. I'm a full factory pit bike rider now, Chrissy. I'm over the moon because it's only a recent newly discovered love of my life. It's pit bike racing. It's obviously, don't get me, people be thinking I'm a full-time pit bike rider now, but I'm not. I'm very much, but no, pitbikeparts.com. No, they're actually the biggest in the UK for selling pit bikes and like everything to do with them, spare wheels, springs, stickers, the lot. They can give you apps, they can build a bike from the ground up, but they are also the Motor dealers. So what they've done is they've jammed like a 190 Daytona engine 4-valve over thing to compete in what they call like the super mini class. And what a laugh. Now bear in mind, you get like your Richard Coopers, your Kyle Rides, you've got who else, you've got Lee Jackson that enter that class and stuff like that when they get moments between their BSB racing. And no, they've asked me to jump on this Motor bike to get to run against these KTMs and Hondas, because their idea is to say where you can race at that class without spending the money. So I went down it, and it was it was howling down with the rain, and what a laugh, man. It was just nice to get out and just have a play around and bed the engine in. But then, I saw a bit of red mist, and it was all good fun. It was an emotional day, Chrissy. It was an emotional day, but then we ended up back down the road again, didn't we? Got back on the rig, got back on the road, and we ended up going to a cracking interview.
A few more podcasts, that's it, spot on. And
there's news, mind, isn't it?
I was just about to say, there's some big news in the racing world. Obviously, you've just mentioned about Scarborough. Yeah, I don't actually know the details, so
hold on, wait a minute. The one person in this podcast that doesn't have any detail on everything, bar just throwing words about, is me, and you're asking me to fill in the details. So no, we actually saw it I saw it on the UK Club Sport Twitter feed, and it's looking like they're gonna get a couple of. What on earth is that? We've got a drive by. I'm not sure if you picked that up there, but that was hellish loud. But no, Scarborough's looking to get a couple of meetings on from August onwards. Which now, oh god, I'm gonna get taught. Just have a look on the bloody internet and find out yourself.
But some racing at Scarborough.
Yeah, so Scarborough's kicking off again, which is absolutely brilliant. I think they're gonna have to do social distance and controlled numbers, but the important thing is that we're getting a road race going. Obviously Macau's on the cards, that's definitely happening, but Scarborough, like a local event, which is awesome, and the fact that it's potentially tying in with the BSB calendar as well, which is dead important. So some sort of racing this season is going to be so welcomed. So welcomed, and I can't wait to see it. I really can't.
And as well as that, I think although nothing's been totally announced yet, I think there's an announcement coming. It'll actually be before. By the time this podcast goes out, it'll already be out because I think it's Wednesday the 10th. But I think BSB are looking to make an announcement, and on the rumour mill, there's a 6-round championship starting at Donington Park, finishing at Donington Park as well. 2 rounds at Donington. And I think the other tracks that are going to be used are Brands GP, Snetterton, Silverstone and Oulton Park. So the likes of Cadwell, Drop, Knockhill, Assen and
do you reckon that's because of the environment? Like what do you mean? Like, because Silverstone's very opened up. But is Oulton Park, did you say, are still going?
Yeah.
I'm thinking social distancing wise, because Cadwell's quite tight Looking kind of the paddock's very tight, you know, pit wall's very tight. I'm just trying to think of like actual opening up the tracks. But you think Silverstone, they'll never fill them grid like the stadiums. No. I mean, sports in general, like most, you know, sadly, it's not like the good old days back in the 60s. The grandstands are quite choppy. You know, don't get me wrong, they still get a good turnout, but it's a perfect geological site to spread out the
Silverstone's
people.
that big that even if there was like 250,000 people there, it would still feel like half empty because there's just so many like grandstands.
I'll put my shovel back down now. There you go.
But yeah, really looking forward to the news, and obviously like you said, everyone's just desperate to get out. Track days are well underway, and I've not been on one yet, but from the people I've spoke to, they're reporting back that they're a big success. People are, you know, taking the social distancing measures seriously, sticking to that, and it's actually nice to have a bit more space in the garage and not people not bothering you and stuff. And yeah, all the lads and lasses are getting back out, and just can't wait to get back out myself. Really
Good man.
And any other crack before we get on with the interview?
No, it's all starting to look like Christmas at the moment, isn't it? Things are on the way up, young'un. It's about damn time. So here we go, and I'm looking forward to this. And quite frankly, I don't care if no one else enjoys it because I thoroughly enjoyed it, Chrissy. So here we go.
Yeah. So I will just say we've got some new mic equipment, so I'll do my best when we're doing the edits just to make sure all the noise and that sounds okay. But I'm sure it will be. But without further ado, we went down to Ashby de la Zouch.
No wonder you're a maths teacher because your English is fully failing you today.
So down here at Donington Park, and went to see the Mackenzie lads. Yes. Great crack, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the interview. So over to Taylor and Tarran Mackenzie. So we're down at Ashby de la Zouch, and we're joined by the Mackenzie brothers. How are you doing?
You didn't even introduce us. You're doing it. There was no 3-2-1. He's still sexting the missus, and he's.
Yeah. Oh, right. You're not plugged in. Chuck us on here. How are you finding lockdown, lads?
It was going quite smoothly and calm till you two turned up.
It sounds about the stamp of it, to be fair. There we go.
Like a pikeys coming on your drive.
Geordie pikeys. I didn't know they were a thing.
Towards the tarmac drive there, mister. That's an Irish one. Who do I think I am? Sweeney. There we are. There's another good. We need to get him on.
Now, obviously, like the Mackenzie name's like very Scottish. Your dad's obviously speaks with a Scottish accent, but used to sound more English than us. Now, is this what you call home down here, or is it like were you born in Scotland and then moved here, or what's the story?
The story. We were both born in Scotland. We lived there till I was 7, Taz was 5, and then when Dad finished racing and it made loads of sense, he moved down to England, which didn't make any sense. He lived in Scotland his whole racing career, travelled everywhere, and then the second he stopped, he moved to the middle of England, which is a perfect base for racing. So we've lived there ever since.
Ah, cool. And obviously we're not far from Donington here as well, so you've kind of got 2 home rounds really, haven't you? So use Knockhill and which clever, you know,
spread the fan base, sells more t-shirts.
I like it. And I've seen with the merch and stuff that you do. Did you start doing face masks or something?
I did. I was ahead of the game with face masks. I was actually too early because at that point no one wanted them, and they said face masks didn't do anything. But now I've noticed a lot of MotoGP riders have started, so I like to think that I started that trend.
Start the trend, good lad.
Yeah. I love it. Obviously, we're still in dangerous times, and you're not wearing a face mask now. You know, you're not really supporting your brand. Now, your brother here, on the other hand, is a very professional. Literally, Monster Energy have thrown up on him. This is brilliant, and you.
I'm not fast enough. I've got a Tesco top and a Tesco hat.
You should have a white sponsor me here.
It's coming. If anyone's watching.
And also, I've been enjoying the lockdown. What are you calling them? The YouTube thing that you're doing? Lockdown, whatever.
Yeah.
Especially the Mad Mark thing with your dad. Absolutely brilliant. For those that are listening, if you haven't already seen it, head over. Is it just Taylor Mackenzie?
Taylor Mackenzie, yeah.
And some great videos through lockdown.
Hold on. Before we go any further, what the hell are you talking about?
So basically, Mad Mark is like, I don't know.
Your typical motocross dad.
Yeah, that we've turned our dad into.
Now, we've opened up a can of worms here. Go on, you describe to me what's a typical motocross dad.
Well,
we're going to upset a few people here, Chrissy. You listen.
Rice's dad's one. No, I'm joking. No, it's someone that doesn't appreciate the kid's hard work and effort, and he's risking his life riding a motorbike. But if he's not good enough, then he's going to have to walk home. So
this has turned into a therapy session. This is brilliant, Chrissy.
Yeah. It's basically the sort of dads that are living their own dreams through their kids. Yeah. That's the motocross dad. angry person stood at the side of the track, which is pretty clueless, doesn't actually know what's going on. So we've got stories that we've heard from around the paddock, and I've texted a lot of people getting a lot of different stories, and they've all been portrayed through Mad Mark. So most of what you see on Mad Mark is actually true stories that we've just recreated.
Do you know, there's so many times that I would love to have like a parody account, which I could like. Sometimes I have so many like views and stuff that I would love to be able like that. I wouldn't want to say it myself just because of the bad like thing that I would get from it. But yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely love it. So funny. Now, obviously, you're in a bit of a unique situation where your dad was, you know, extremely successful. Last week we had Michael Rutter on the podcast, and obviously he was following in the footsteps of his dad and like World Superbike champion and stuff. And obviously your dad was like at one point one of the best riders in the world. He was like third in the equivalent of MotoGP, wasn't he?
Fourth, yeah.
Fourth.
Don't
Get it right.
But, you know, like,
if he says if you told him third, he'll be fuming because he probably missed out on it. But
like, you know, like one of the top riders in the world, then come back to BSB, three times BSB champion off the back. You know, it's like a very successful father. When you two were born, at what point of his career was that?
He was
last year at GPs with
me,
Taylor,
yeah.
and then
year
year
BSB.
before his first year in BSB. So, and then he retired in 2000, I think.
I like to think that I made it his career because he was on a downward spiral till he'll tell you that I finished his GP career.
Yeah, and I made his British Superbike career.
So he's just a quick fire question. Are you two faster than your dad?
What?
Yeah.
Go on then.
What do you want us like making?
No, in general on a motorcycle. I just want to know because now growing up, like my dad races bikes as well, and I just want to beat my dad. I just want to be faster than my dad. I want to just do everything better than my old man. Is that the same for you two?
I hope we're faster than him now.
Yeah, he's 60 next year, I think. Yeah, you're 60 next year, isn't he? So
60.
I think when we're both riding for good British Superbike teams.
Like he's not ready for a comeback.
In our 20s, if we said we weren't faster than a 60-year-old man, then I think maybe we wouldn't have our jobs. But no, I think we've got the better of him now, haven't we?
There was definitely a transition point when we were like, I don't know. It started off with a run. We used to take us running from Mad Mark. He had us running from 2 years old. We were out training.
Are you being serious?
He'd let us out from the cupboard under the stairs where we weren't allowed to grow or eat.
With the whip.
Yeah, and when he was
Smoked
chasing
loads
me,
of fags, stunted our growth.
yeah, there was a transition point where I thought I can finally outrun him, and that was the first day when I thought, right, I'm faster than him at running. And then it's been bit by bit. Then it was mountain biking, and then it took a few years on a motorbike. He was a lot faster than me for a lot of years, but
yeah, it's spiraled for him now.
yeah, he's on a downward slope.
And does your dad help? I've seen him like around the paddock and stuff, like spotting in your sessions and stuff. Does he still give you like sort of valuable information now and help you with your riding?
Yeah, I'm trying to give a stupid answer, but no. Aggressive information. He's quite aggressive at times. No, we couldn't have been anywhere near as good as we are today without our dad. He's definitely helped us, even from day one. He helps us less now than when we were younger, obviously, but he's I can't fault him.
It sort of changed a little bit when we were younger. He was obviously teaching us things to do. Not that he can't teach us anymore, but like he's got to a point now where instead of him telling us what we need to be doing, it's sort of just comparing us to other riders, really. So, but yeah, he's still very valuable and still loves it as ever.
Does he ever give you it wasn't like this in my day, and like I had to do this, I had to do that? Or
he's not too bad. Every now and again he likes to drop in the word unrideable from that documentary, and how we used to be teammates with Spencer, but I've never heard of these women, so.
Have you ever ridden a two-stroke like what he's done, the unrideable then? Have you ever had a go yourselves?
Never a 500, but we grew up on two straights, didn't we? We were quite lucky we were still in that period. So when, like Chrissy and did, I'm sure you still ride two strokes now, but...
Oh, no, I only first rode a two-stroke last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
so
right,
I had to get a job, unlike you lucky buggers, so I get board bikes. The silver spoon in your mouth, I got dragged up, kids. Not brought up, dragged up.
I thought this was with Dom, not Guy Martin.
I put deodorant on for this interview because we're in a small little box here. So, yeah, I'm not totally scruffy. There you go.
Actually, my first ever race, like on tarmac on a big track was at Mallory Park
It's
in
against me.
2009. That was like,
hold on.
I was like, I'm battling with Neil Mackenzie's son. And it was like a big thing. Me, you, and Gary Winfield were battling for like 30th place.
Yes. I think we got lapped.
Yeah, we kept passing each other at the hairpin, and yeah, it was well funny. But was that the first year racing for you as well, or because I did like mini bikes and stuff?
Yeah.
Now, before you get into that, who crossed the line then?
I can't
First,
remember.
come on, we're not
Gary
doing
Winfield.
that.
I don't remember it was me.
Yes,
though.
you can't.
Honestly, can't remember.
You can't remember. Well, if there's any listeners out there listening to this and they know the actual facts, please get in touch. That's got to be a definite.
It was for a bit. It was for a good position, to be fair. It was like Rossi sort of Stoner-esque moves on track, battling for 30th place.
Cutting the chicane at Edwina.
Do or die moves. No, we grew up on mini motos. We've always had little bikes, like little off-road bikes to ride since we were young, really. And then we got 2 Chinese Blatter mini motos that we started riding on. And then the Polini importer in Scotland called Alan McIntosh, he sort of found out that Neil Mackenzie's sons were riding around on Chinese mini motos and he wasn't happy. So he, luckily for us, he sent a proper like Polini mini moto down for Taylor to ride, and then sort of like I wanted to do what Big Brother did, really. So it just sort of started from that and snowballed. So it
escalated quite quickly.
Yeah, it was Alan McIntosh's fault, basically.
Because I think around that time,
He'll be at home now with his arms in the air going, yes, get in!
Around that time that we were starting in Super Teens, I think you were already in the MotoGP paddock by then, weren't you? Or the Red Bull Rookies.
Yeah,
Rookies
would have been, yeah.
And back then, I mean, obviously there'll have been loads of names that have went on to like different championships and whatever. Who's like the most famous person that you've
Go on, name drop.
Name drops.
I mean, I've been waiting for this moment for years. You want me to get the timesheet out? Now, I'm going to bring out the ultimate. It was wet. I'll put that out there. But on pole was... Who was on pole? Taz even knows the timesheet.
I think it was Alex Rins on pole, isn't it?
There was Alex Rins.
Is this in the rookies?
What I'm trying to get at here is I out-qualified Maverick Vinales. Thanks.
Was that on the GP125s or the
It was
Red Bull?
in Spanish Championship.
So if you walked up to Vinales, would he just look at you and go...
Okay.
I remember him. He dished out some portions that day.
I've seen lots of times in my life people come up to my dad. I used to race your dad, and I'll ask my dad, and he'll go, "I've no idea. I am that bloke for Spanish people." But no, there was quite a few. There was Alex Rins, Alex Marquez. Who else was in there?
Vinales, Bagnaia, people like that.
Oliveira. There was a lot of good riders that went on to great things, and here I am sat in a trailer.
And essentially mobile brothel.
Yeah.
on your mum and dad's drive. You're living the dream, aren't you, son?
When you were in GP125s as well, I remember like a really good race. I can't remember which country it was in, but it was a wet race, and I'm sure you were like 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
And if you think in a Grand Prix, that's motoring on, innit?
Yeah. I really enjoyed my time in Grand Prix. It didn't quite work out, but there was a lot of good kids. I sort of grew up with Danny Kent as well. He was like he was better than me. He went on to some good stuff, but he finished 4th in that race, so it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
and obviously you spent some time in the Rookies Cup as well. Who was the best rider?
Out qualifying. Who was your best out qualifying? There we are.
Who was your biggest claim to fame for the Rookies?
Oh, I don't know about Rookies.
I think Top Rack was in it.
Top Rack. There was Juan Mia.
Top who?
Top Rack, Razgatlioglu.
The only person that I know who can pronounce his name. I was just going Top Rack.
Jorge. There was loads of kids at the time. Jorge Martin, Baldassari, Binder, people like that are obviously all pretty much in MotoGP now. So yeah, similar to Taylor, are like gone our separate ways. They're now multi-millionaires riding in MotoGP, and I'm still living at mum and dad's house. But no, it was obviously a good time because I was only 15 or 16 at the time, and like getting to race on MotoGP tracks with all these Spanish kids or like foreign kids. Obviously they weren't big names at that time, but they were fast then, and obviously they're still fast now.
And obviously you did a bit of Moto 2 as well, so there would have been some
big hitters. I think it was Thomas Luthi, was 2005 125 world champion, and I hadn't even started racing at that point, and I was racing him in Moto 2. So yeah, there was obviously loads of fast people that year, and it was a real eye-opener to just turn up there, not seen some of the tracks, never ridden the bike before, and yeah, it was all new to me. But again, a massive learning year, and managed to score. We seemed to be good in the wet. I scored my first point in Japan in the wet, so my claim to fame, passed Fabio Quartararo and beat him in that race, so I'll go with that one.
Now, from
mine was Scott Campbell, East Fortune North East Club. You know what I mean? He's a hell of a digger driver, you know what I mean? The only man who can shift 10 ton while rolling a tab. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, let's continue this cockfight.
Now, from you, do you know, when you went to Moto2, it was off the back of an extremely dominant year in Supersport, and especially the beginning of that season. It was something like 6 out of 6 wins, or something, like absolutely smoking everybody.
Yeah, it was getting boring. No, I'm joking.
And then obviously took the plunge to go to it's like the most competitive championship in the world, pretty much, because all the bikes are so similar, and it's, you know, everyone's vying for that chance to get to MotoGP.
Yeah.
Looking back on your time, what was the biggest sort of learning curves for that year? What, in terms of your riding style, or what?
I think it was I'd ridden stock 600 from 2014 to, or basically like a production bike from 2014 to 2017. So I'd done 4 seasons, and I'd sort of got used to a road bike that was used to hitting potholes and going over speed humps, and wasn't like an actual race bike that's built for going racing. When I rocked up to Moto2, everything, you could only change the front and rear suspension on the Supersport bike, where you were changing like pivots, swing arms, just anything you wanted to change, you could change. So there was slicks involved, and obviously I'd done a little bit of Moto3 and 125 riding on that when I was probably a little bit more inexperienced. But yeah, I got to Moto2, turned up to Le Mans. The only thing that was the same from my last race at Alton Park, which was basically 2 weeks before, to turn up to Le Mans, was I was wearing the same helmet, leathers, gloves, boots, bike, team. Everyone's talking Italian and German, and I don't know what's going on. So it was a real eye-opener. I didn't get to test the bike, and it was like, the only way I can describe it was because I was flat out on the PlayStation trying to learn Le Mans before I got there. I literally had like a week and a half, I think, to get ready for it. And I rocked up, and I was going down pit lane, put the pit limiter on. I couldn't bump start the bike first of all, which is embarrassing, but I got that going. Headed down pit lane, and it was like being on a PlayStation game. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like people that I'd watched since I was young, like Simone Corsi, who was like really fast in 125s. You might, well, yeah, he's a good, well, not just him, but obviously other names. And then I was just like, this is bizarre. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? Last week I was racing.
You can't name drop it.
Last week I was racing Andrew Irwin, and now I'm like racing against the best in the world, like battling with Andrew Irwin, and so it was just the most bizarre situation. And
how much pressure did you feel on at that exact moment? You must have thought that this is the top of the table here.
Yeah,
we're going like.
I just didn't want to embarrass myself. That was the biggest thing. I didn't care where I finished. I knew I was going to be towards the back. It was different style of riding. You had to ride them differently. I went from that Supersport bike, I had so much confidence on it, and during the weekend it just slowly knocked my confidence because I probably like didn't improve much from the third free practice really, which was weird. So the first few practices I didn't think about it. I just got on it and rode it. I crashed it, but I didn't care. And then I think not just that weekend, but also as the weekends went on, I started to care more and started to like, I don't want to get in his way, or I don't want to get in their way, and it was just a knock-on effect really, and then it sort of just affected me. But the one thing I did have was when it was wet, I had a bit more confidence, and I felt like I could
an equal playing field.
Yeah, and I could perform better. The bike and team I was in was good, but it wasn't the best bike and team to be in the paddock. It was probably like one of the lower rated teams, and it was tough. There was a crew chief change. They weren't happy with the crew chief, so he got sacked, and there was a number of things that went on like that. But yeah, I enjoyed my time. I was travelling the world and didn't have to go to BSB anymore, so it was great.
Now a lot of people talk about the transition to Moto2, about having to use the back brake so much more than any other class really. Could you just break down like what exactly goes into that?
So the rear brake, when I got there, I can remember on the Thursday, I I think it was Sam Lowson and Hodgie said, okay, we'll walk the track with you, try and help you. And I was walking out the garage, like, oh, I'm going to walk the track. And they're like, oh, how much do you use the rear brake? And I was thinking, I don't use the rear brake.
Well, I don't, but let's get this straight. I'm considerably slower than you, man, so there you are.
I'd used it for maybe going over Clay Hill or Deers Leap at Alton Park to try and hold the wheelie down a little bit, but I'd never... We were on road rear brakes. You touch them, it's like touching a BMX back brake. It skids straight away, whereas these Moto 2 or like Moto 3 brakes, as soon as you touch them, they don't actually do a lot. Like, you can't really make it skid as soon as you touch it. It'll like just help you basically turn. So you see everyone's on it. They can go into right-handers, go into left-handers. They press it. Some people have different sort of ideas of how to use it. Some people use it before they've grabbed the front brake to take weight off the front, so they can grab the front harder, or the front brake harder, or people brake it, go back the gears, and then just as they turning in, they press the rear brake. And
almost like engine brake and sort of pulling the bike into
yeah,
the turn.
and just making it turn a little bit. So I got used to it as the year went on. It was very strange to have to like change my riding style. I'd never really had to do that before. I just sort of adapted to whatever bike I was riding, and yeah, I started trying to use it. It was difficult at times, and I think what was worse was my teammate Domi Agata had been in GPs longer than I'd raced, and he was like the demon on the rear brake, so I was always getting compared to that. So it was hard to sort of I can remember, well, there's so many debriefs where they're like, you need to do what Domi's doing, and it was hard at times to think, I'm trying to learn the track, I'm trying to do all this thing, trying to get used to the tyres, everything, the bike. It's really stiff now, and I don't know how to ride it, and then like also having to use the rear brake and use the clutch the right way. So it was all a big learning curve, and the idea was to try and do that year and have another year the year after to go back to the same tracks to sort of have more experience, and yeah, it was a change in my whole life really, because I was going to traveling to Japan on my own and going to Australia, and
at what age were you at this
I was
point?
20 or
Bloody hell.
21, I think. So I was like not young. There was kids that have been doing it since they were like 15, 16. So I wasn't like, I couldn't complain, but it was obviously just a life. Like, it
And
was
you're the first time there stuffing your bag full of like duty free like that. Oh, Christmas early, young and spot the tourist.
While you were for that year in Moto 2, is there any like sort of standout moments where like someone passed you or something and you just thought like, Jesus, I didn't think that was possible?
One Matteo Piscini, who's obviously been in GPs forever, his right hand doesn't work. If you basically looked at both his arms, he's got an arm like mine that's really, really skinny, and then he's got a really like normal looking arm, a tree surgeon arm. So
thank you. I'm glad you noticed.
And so basically he had to do everything with his left hand except his throttle. So he had his throttle in his right hand, but he did the clutch and brake in his left hand. So I'm
kind of like Robert Dunlop. Robert Dunlop did a similar thing.
Yeah,
so it was all that's hellish. That like
there's a few people that do it. So obviously, if you're doing it and wobbling around at the back, then that's fine. But he's fighting for Grand Prix wins every weekend. So, but there was a moment where he came past me in Austria into the second to last corner, and it like comes over a crest of a hill, and then you brake quite hard, and then you let the brake off into this really fast right, and he striked me so hard, and because he didn't use the clutch because of his hand, he used to blip and backshift at the same time, and it would go into gear, and he blipped, and it scared the living daylight out of me. I turned in, and I felt like just pulling in. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, he striked me so hard, and that was probably there was a lot of moments like that, but that was probably like a standout moment.
I've just thought of a really good thing for Nomad Mark. Can you know your first year of racing?
Yeah.
You were too small to touch the ground.
Yeah.
So you always used to have a mechanic waiting for you in pit lane.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of times
Drop it.
Yeah, if it like a red flag or if like something got stopped, you had no waiters.
Yeah.
So you used to try and get near a wall and rest it on there. But you could maybe incorporate that as like I don't know, food for thought. Anyway.
Yeah.
Now, talking about going from like say super stock onto a Grand Prix bike, it was kind of the opposite way for you. You'd went through 125s, the World 125 Championship, and then you came to British Supersport on a road Supersport bike.
Yeah.
How did you find that transition?
The transition for me I felt a little bit. It's weird when you're racing British Championship now. You're sort of on road bikes the whole way up, and then you come onto a normal bike, and that way around. I didn't actually enjoy it at first because the tyres are really soft. You feel like you've got everything's just like moving all the time. And I'd gone from riding a bike where nothing moved. If it moved, it was because you were about to have a massive crash, and you can't really save anything on 125. If it slides, it spits you off. So it took me a while to get into.
That's an incredible. Like never riding one myself. That's an incredible mindset, that though, because you watch you lads, and you're constantly buckling, like you say, everything's moving, and you can see, you know where that is. So riding a bike at that pace, going no grip, bang. That must have been quite intimidating. That. In a way,
I can vouch for that. Took the front 15 times in Moto 2.
Yeah. Was your dad keeping count or something like that?
I was keeping count.
There was a crash damage bill to pay, that's why.
Right.
Dad was keeping count. No, the 125s, you obviously build up. You don't just get to, you know roughly where the limit is. But when you do have a crash, you think, I wasn't expecting that most of the time. But when I come back to Supersport, I moved from a tiny little bike that didn't move to a big bike that felt fast for me, because I'd ridden 125s forever, and then I got a Supersport bike. And
sorry, I just throw random questions in totally. So what kind of brake horsepower are we talking about in that GP bike there?
My GP bike had about 2.5 horsepower. Probably about 50 horsepower, 55
to like 130, would you say, or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you say, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
That is a huge
jump. And it's heavier. It was the weight that was the thing, because I was tall-ish for a 125 rider at the time, so I was really skinny. I only weighed about 57 kilos, 58 kilos, and then now I'm sort of 67, and at that point I was 21, so I was pretty much an adult by that point, and I was still really, really skinny. So that was the biggest thing, not being strong enough to ride it really, and building up. And at that time as well, I probably, for me looking back, jumped into British Supersport one of the worst points. There was so many good riders in it. There was Jack Kennedy, Glenn Richards, Billy McConnell, Graham Gowland.
It was when the Triumphs were dominating as well, wasn't it? So it was super competitive.
And I was on a really good bike. The Martrain bike was good. Jack was fighting for the championship, and it was like probably too much too soon. I'd have been better having a year in stock 600, building up in stock 600, learning to ride a 600 on British tracks, because riding a 600 on British tracks compared to a 125 is so different. It's like every track on a 125, you're trying to do things flat out everywhere. That's all you're trying to do, and then just trying to get back to the throttle and keep your speed going. And wasn't like that on a 600 when I first moved. So that took a while to get used to that, and I sort of got the hang of it by the end of the year. I finished 6th in my last race, which was okay. I was happy with that. But then I moved the next year, swapped onto the Suzuki, which that was where I struggled for a bit, because I don't think the Suzuki was a bike to be on at that point.
It was a bit old-fashioned for the 600 model, wasn't it?
Yeah. If I'd had the 750 like previous people did, I might have been all right.
So
you know,
let's move on. Let's move on. So no, it's interesting, like the back brake things. Now I remember having a look at I got invited down by Colin Davies to come in the mechanics, and your clutch is fully vertical, and you've got like a BMX brake lever.
Yeah,
that is absolutely incredible. So have you got something similar to that?
I have a thumb brake. Yeah.
So like, talk me through that. That must be a hell of a... You don't clutch on the Yamahas, do you?
No, it's all... In Superbike class, you have the auto blip, so...
Just for wheelies.
Yeah. Not that much power at wheelies in any gear, Chrissy. When I first got there, I just had no... hand rear brake. I just had it all on my foot. So I was doing everything on my foot. Because I'd come from Moto 2, and the brakes... Forks brakes, there was a lot of similarities between the Superbike and Moto 2, so it wasn't actually that big of a jump other than the actual speed of the bike. So when I got on that, I was using my foot everywhere, and then I was really struggling to stop the wheelie coming out of right-handers, which I couldn't get my foot to the... When coming out of a left-hander, it's easy because you're leant over left, your right foot's obviously on the right, so using the rear brake was easy, but when you're coming out of a right, you were trying to pick it up, it was hard to get your foot to it. So then that's when we had the handbrake, which... Van der Mark had been using in World Superbike, and they sent one over to basically copy and use. So I started using the finger brake, and at the time my teammate was Josh Brooks. He started using that as well, and then he swapped to the thumb brake. So it's effectively like a thumb brake just to help wheelie, basically.
Right. So why do you go for the thumb brake and then you go for the lever? Is that just literal personal preference?
If you've got adults' hands, you can actually use the thumb brake.
Because I've noticed Hickman's doing the same as you now. You see more and more riders doing that.
Yeah, he's got big hands.
I did try a finger brake, but I was riding for Michael at the time when we Rutter, and he put it into my head. The second I got that, he went, I don't like that. I said, why? He says, because I know at some point something's going to happen to that bike and you're going to pull the clutch in and pull the brake in. And he put it in my head from the first moment I rode it, and I didn't. It was actually Taz's bike I rode, and because it was set up for Taz, it was a little bit. There wasn't enough room for my hand in there, and I struggled the first time I rode it, and then I went back to the thumb brake the next day on my own bike, and I've always just got used to riding with a thumb brake, and I always think the more you practice with something, the better you get.
Yes.
And I've ridden with a thumb brake for 2 years, so then to swap to a finger brake, you're learning something again.
Right.
And really, that whether you're using the thumb or your finger, if you can still use it, then it doesn't matter really. But
you see, recently I've got it. Sorry, Chrissy, I'm just going off on what about brakes. All honest, they've been talking about brakes for half an hour now. But I've recently got a Chinese bike, like a Sai Motor thing, and I've put a thumb brake on it, and I'm trying to learn to use it. Like when I ride at the TT, I'm never off the back brake for that reason, just big power wheelies. But do you use it to de-accelerate as well as mid-turn? Do you use it all the time? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I get told off. The amount of times, especially in that first year, they'll be like, why are you on the rear brake down the back straight? It's completely flat at Silverstone because I've got my hand on it constantly. Ended up pulling it in. But yeah, we do use it pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
There we go. Top tip from Chasin the Racin. Anyway, let's continue. Let's get off brakes for a second.
From your Supersport days, you stepped up to Superbikes quite early in terms of where you were in Supersport, and then up to Superbikes. First time up with the WD-40 team, and obviously there was that famous the fireball and like the logo. And
that was you. See, I actually know nothing about this sport. That's why I like this, because I learned so much. That clip gets played again and again and again. You actually looked at it 3 times and thought, it'll blow out, and then you jumped off.
Yeah. Was it? Did you just feel the heat coming up and then just think, shit, I've got to? Because you never plan on that happening, so it must have just been totally instinctual.
Tell him the truth, Taylor.
No, this hasn't been made public, but you get an inside scoop.
Fantastic.
Basically, what happened was that bike was not my favourite bike in the world, and it broke a few times that year. And that one time, it dropped a valve as I was coming round, so I was that angry. I was just going, things not working, so I revved it, and whatever happened when I revved it, it didn't like it. So the other thing with that bike was it was incredibly hot all of the time for whatever reason. The frame was by my legs and it was always red hot, so I'd got used to my legs being red hot all the time anyway. So I was sat on it for so long because my legs were hot, but I didn't feel it. I was just thinking, oh, my legs are hot, and then I'm thinking, God, they're proper hot now. And I looked down, and as I looked down, I was like, that's a flame. So the first thing is you see a flame, but then your brain, it's funny how it works because it's all like split second stuff. My brain's going, right, you're on fire, but you're not dying. And then
I've got 4 more laps.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. But you're also, I was doing probably 70, 80 mile an hour at that point. So your brain then chooses, do I burn to death or do I jump off and hurt myself that way? And so it was like a balancing act that's all going on in my brain. So I veered for the grass, and as I veered for the grass, just by pure chance, I just about had enough time of melting stuff that I was all right. I jumped onto the grass. I hurt my shoulder, but I was all right. But when I got off, if you watch the video back, I'm actually like jumping across the floor and like hopping, and it's because my boot's on fire. It's like melted through my boot.
Jesus.
And it was honestly, it had gone through my boot all the way to literally the fabric, and it was my toe that was next, obviously, and that's how close. But when I jumped, it got hotter and hotter and hotter. But when I jumped, it was like if someone puts a lighter under your skin, and that initial like, oh yeah, that was on the back of like the whole of my leg. I got that feeling like you're on fire, and I jumped. I didn't jump through choice. It looked like I went, oh, I'll get to the grass and hop off that and it'll be fine. But I actually got to the grass and just jumped. Cause
when you think how lucky that, I know like you had a good laugh about it after and stuff, but when you actually think how lucky that is, because it would just take one thing to get on fire.
Oh yeah.
And then it would just spread around. You know, it's
and the inside of my leathers, where there's all like stretchy fabric, is obviously like
flammable,
plasticky, like, and that would have just it started melting that as well. So all that would have been in my leg. It would have been a hell of a mess. So. Yeah, it's funny now because it was funny not long after it because I got away with it, but yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
Now that team with that bike, the team obviously you rode in Supersport for them. They've had the Kawasaki in Superbikes for quite a while. At a time when like say Shaky was winning on it, Leon Hassan was winning, and it's, you know, if you to the eye it looks like the same sort of package, but there's not only yourself, but there's been many top riders been on that bike. You know, Tommy Bridewell. Jack Kennedy's been on. There's loads. What is it? Why why can that bike not be competitive at the front?
Maybe ask them.
Well dodged, young man. There we are. That's it. There you are. Let's Chris, your editing skills better be on point after this one, mate, because you wasted 5 minutes of this.
But, like, yeah, Tommy or Jack on the podcast.
Do you have any like enlightenment?
No, it didn't work out for me that year. It was just one of those years. The next year was all right.
There we go. Then
come back the next year.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk about like near misses. That was a huge near miss. What's been? You're like, okay, let's go. What's your biggest crash?
My biggest crash.
Your biggest like. This is the end of me. Like
one of my slowest crashes was one of my worst ones at Chasin in Superbike. I was actually on an in-lap in the wet in qualifying. It wasn't happening. And at that tiny little hairpin, I just had a tiny little high side. It went rip and spat me off. But as it spat me off, it flicked me onto my back. And as it flicked me onto my back, I landed, it smacked my head, and it opened my visor. It was just like the worst timing. Opened my visor, and just as that happened, the bike came straight down. The handlebar went straight into my visor.
Shut up, man.
Like the chances of that happening. And it went down the side of my nose like that. And at the same time landed on my shoulder, and it dislocated and broke my shoulder. But the worst bit of that crash was I was actually getting carried away by a medic, some Dutch bloke, and I'm like, blood's like pouring out my face, and I can feel blood on my face, and I thought, shit, like this isn't good. So I'm touching my face, and I went to the bloke, is my nose broke? And he went, yes, your nose is broken. I'm like, all right, cool. It turned out my nose wasn't broke. I just got a big nose. And I didn't know. That was the worst. Horrific. Like, insult to injury. Cheers, mate. You've got a big nose. I went, is my nose broken? He went, no.
I wonder if there's some Dutch bloke now going, remember that lad who bust his nose?
Massive nose.
So, what about yours, man?
There's been plenty, but the probably scariest one was last year at Brands going into the last corner on a...
I've never been to Brands, so like, is that sweeping uphill turn you're talking about?
Yeah. So it drops downhill a little bit. I lost the front, and there wasn't... they've improved the runoff now, courtesy of me, but...
Vickers had the same
crash.
Yeah,
Vickers had the same crash. I think he banged his head. I banged my head. I didn't know where I was, and for like maybe a week, I was like a bit still dazed, didn't really know what was happening. So that was quite scary. Stuck under the barrier, didn't know where I was. Broke 2 of the fins that come off your vertebrae.
Aye.
Transverse process, as they're called. So I broke that. So that, and I was just laid in hospital thinking, like, that was quite a big crash, but I didn't really know anything about it at the time. So that one.
We've had our fair share, but we normally bounce quite well.
Yeah.
But sadly in this game, you've got to, if you're not pushing, you're not crashing, and like, but like that strength, we don't actually. You're the first guest we've actually talked about that, but as professionals, how hard it is for you to actually crash a bike and go out and you're on lap record pace straight away. Is that just such a natural thing as professionals now? But when you started off, was that quite a hard barrier to break through? Or do you just my dad's going to brace if I don't put a good lap in?
We were both so scared of our dad that we just carried on riding, because it was the beating the bike was going to give you, that was nothing compared to what dad was going to give you. So
the most crashes I had when I was younger was just in pit lane and falling over on the grid because I couldn't touch the floor. So
now back to your career, and after Moto 2, obviously back to the British Superbikes for Top Team, who you're with now, and it's turned into like a really successful combination, you and the team. The first year you sort of gradually moved up and up and up, and towards the end of that year you're becoming like super competitive. I remember, was it Chasin was a bit of a breakthrough?
Yeah, it was, well, it depends what you call as a breakthrough, but the Silverstone was the first time I was like fighting for a podium, and then I think there was 3 races, crashed out in the second one, but I had 2 podiums and nearly won the third race.
The middle brands you went all right?
Middle brands was, I was on edge, and if you'd been on the bike with me, you would have just thought...
Was that when you had the white...
Yeah, the trick colour scheme, yeah.
Well, I remember a picture you put on going down Paddock Hill Bend, full lock, But no, and then you went down at the back straight, didn't you? The right-hander. But yeah, I remember you were properly getting on it that weekend.
When I first got on a superbike, I obviously I could understand how to ride it, but I didn't understand how to ride it. I didn't understand how to race it. I'd just get on it, go balls out for 20 laps and see where I end up, whether it's in the gravel or past the checkered flag. So I got to that middle brands, and for whatever reason, I just clicked. Something happened that weekend, and I started getting a bit stronger. I qualified 4th, I think. First race was just like, was went back to like 5th, 6th, and then came through and was in 3rd for pretty much the whole race. Had Leon Haslam behind me, Irwin and Brooks in front of me, and I was like holding a gap to Irwin and Brooks, but like holding 0.6, 0.7 to Leon the whole race. The tyre was completely gone, the front was gone, I was just on edge the whole time. And I came, I think it was 19 of 20 laps, it was a really hot day, and I had 0.6 on my board. I just had to get around one more time, and then it was the last lap. And went end of the back straight, just didn't think I'd done anything different, lost the front and went down. But that was like a real turning point. I was obviously gutted. Dad wasn't too pleased with me after that, but...
Now, with Taylor obviously being the older brother and going over the years, I presume that you'll have always like been given Taz advice and sort of like, you know, like
he's presuming
as he's been coming through, you know, you would look to your brother for advice. Is that ever sort of, you know, the dynamic between you ever sort of changed? Where like, do you sort of help each other, or
we've always sort of helped each other really? That I've obviously been older, but at the same time, Taz has always known everything that I've known in effect because we grew up doing the same thing. We raced mini motos together, so me watching Taz is no different to Taz watching me.
I was about to say, it only became competitive when he came along. In theory, you know what I mean?
Well, whatever we did when we
race up the stairs.
Yeah, when we were younger, it was a nightmare. It was like anything there was a stopwatch involved was hideous. We used to. This is just how stupid it was. Racing up the stairs every day. I used to hate waking up because you'd be like racing down the stairs, racing up the stairs. Who brushed their teeth the fastest? Who eats the breakfast the fastest? Who gets out there? And it was relentless. But then as we got a bit older and we sort of, it made more sense for us to help each other rather than fighting each other all the time.
We've actually got a game of, it's like Mr. and Mrs., but it's Taz versus Taylor, which we'll stick on YouTube afterwards, but I'm sure we'll get some good gossip out of that. Now, we've sort of skipped over a real like glory year for both of you, 2017 was it? 16. And obviously you were in British Supersport then, you were in Stock 1000. Every weekend you were pretty much either both winning or, you know, podiums or whatever. Real successful. I bet that must have been a great time to be in the Mackenzie household, like McDonald's every weekend. absolutely loving life.
Class, yeah.
Now, were you... Like, obviously, if one of you had the first race, were you like really nervous about the other person and kind of willing each other on all the time? And
it wasn't so much the race; it was when it got to the championship and Taylor, because we were like started off. It was Taylor's first year in Stock 1000, my first year in Supersport, and pretty much for the majority of the year, we're like podiums every weekend. Like, this is amazing, McDonald's all the time. And then
you're gonna have to explain this McDonald's crack because you three are in on this joke. So
it was basically I don't know how it even started, but it was whoever was faster on the weekend had to buy.
Whatever the way it worked out was, I ended up buying it every single weekend, regardless of what happened. So I don't know what.
It was.
I got stitched.
Yeah, we wasn't really earning much money, so Taylor was always buying the McDonald's. But it just basically whoever was fastest or Taylor bought the McDonald's. So anyway, it basically.
Do you know how many people? Sorry, do you know how many people are going to watch next whenever this season gets going? Watching the pair of you going, who's getting the Mackies in?
Yeah.
Who's getting them?
I'm not queuing an hour there for McDonald's.
Sorry, I keep interrupting.
So it was all right during the year. We basically got to basically like crunch time where we were both all getting like pretty much getting podiums most weekends, and then we started leading the championship. Then we started trying to increase the championship gap, and then that's when it became like shit.
It all went.
Taylor's won the Stock 1000 championship. I've still got 2 rounds to go now, and like now the pressure is on me, racing against James Westerman and Brad Ray, who are on, especially James Westerman, on a good bike. So it was difficult, and then. That was all everyone was saying, like, oh, you're going to win your championship now? And I was thinking, well, no, I'm just going to finish second. Like, I'm going to try my best to win it. So that's when it became a little bit more tough.
Now, for me, the most impressive thing about that season for you, Taz, was the last race of the season after you'd already won the championship. And obviously, at that point, most people are like, phew, relax, hair down, whatever. You've proved your point. You've won the championship. And it was a last race of the season against Bradley Ray, and you were battling on the last lap. And it was going into the last corner, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dive bomb Brad and took the victory when there was no need to like take that risk, and that really like sort of stands out as if like you're not just there for the championship. You know, you're like really proving that you deserved the championship that year. And obviously for you it was more with Ian Hutchinson that year, and obviously it were the highs and lows at Oulton Park.
Thank God you said that. I remember turning the telly on. That has been my favourite moment in BSB history, right? Because Hutchie came on gone, back markers, back markers, back markers. 2 seconds later, he gets in front of the telly, big smile on his face, gone, I love back markers, mate. I was crying with laughter.
Yeah.
It was just, there's your toys, put them back in the pram, son.
Yeah, I was on top wind-up form that year.
Was that awkward with, obviously, because your mum was I've got to stop saying obviously. People keep messaging us on the thing. It's like my
obviously
my nervous word. Like everything's obvious that what isn't obvious. Do you know? Was your mum working for Tyco that year as well? So it was a bit awkward, was it?
It started off.
I was going to say obviously there.
I mean, it started off. It wasn't actually me that started all that. It actually stemmed from the year before. Was Michael Dunlop was riding for Bill Base and Hutchie was riding for Tyco at the time, which is Cinetic now. And so they already had a rivalry, Hutchie and Michael. So it just sort of spiraled from that. And then it spilled into the next year with those two at the TT. There was a bit of a feud. But in Superstock, it was me and Josh Elliott at the start of the year that were like head to head. And it was all I was thinking about was Josh Elliott. I wasn't thinking about Hutchie, because he hadn't done any short circuit racing for a while, and Josh had won it the year before, so that was all I was focused on. Then me and Josh Elliott started having a bit of a sparring match, and at Knock Hill we clipped each other, and then at Snetterton he just torpedoed me into turn 2. So at the end of him torpedoing me, then both the teams were at each other. They were both backing up their rider at the time, and that's all you can do as a team. So, but at the same time, my mum was working in hospitality for Tyco, so that was awkward because she was in there signing all the mechanics in. Meanwhile, I'm having like big battles, and then the season went on, and it ended up being me and Hutchie racing each other. And Hutchie was the scariest, most. At that point, we hated each other. I get on with him really well now, and it was an amazing year. But at the time, I hated him, he hated me. Every weekend, it was just we'd come to blows, and it was getting closer and closer to crunch time. And Oulton Park was 2 rounds to go, and there were 3 rounds to go, and he needed to win every race at that point, and I didn't. But I was just doing my best to get in his way and annoy him, and I just got it wrong at the last corner. I went up around the outside of him at the last corner, and at the same point, he'll say it was my fault, and I still will say it's his fault. But he let the brakes off on me, and he was obviously thinking he'd got the line, and we come together, and we both went into gravel and crashed. And at that point, it was
kind of
just
better for you, though, wasn't it?
Well, it was
points-wise.
Exactly, we both went down. He didn't gain any points on me, and it was another race out of the way. So I was actually laid in the gravel, thinking, "Well, that worked out all right."
Job done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it went to Donington, and on the Thursday, I got called in for my second time of the year. I'd already been called in at Knock Hill with the Josh Elliott thing, and then I got called in. It's like getting told off, like you're in the head teacher's office, getting told off by Stuart Higgs and whoever. And then at that point, I was really just like, "Do whatever you want to me. Put me last on the grid, and I was that motivated and that angry, and I'll prove to you that I'm going to win this championship." So I was just like, bring it on. And then Hutchie tweeted something on the Thursday. It was brilliant. No one would, or some people would have known, but like a backhanded stab at me. And that was the best thing he did for me, because it just revved me up so much. And I just thought, right, I'm having you. And they put me back to 8th on the grid, and by pure chance, Hutchie had a crap qualifying, and he qualified 7th next to me. So I was
9th as well.
Well, yeah, you saw
the same.
Yeah.
No,
what was going for? Never mind your head. What were you thinking? Going, here we go, here we go.
It was my first year in Stock 1000, so yeah.
Were you thinking, do I get in front of them, or do I just let them
I just wanted the picture on for the Instagram meet.
For the gram.
Me, Taylor, and Hutchie on the same row.
Yeah. And then in the race, he just went at me, and he couldn't quite get past me on the first lap, and
he had a big moment, didn't he?
He had a big moment, yeah. But then there was a safety car.
Back of him for that.
Yeah, and that was it then. And then I got a gap, and it was actually Rutter that was chasing me the whole race. Wouldn't leave me alone.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then broke the lap record and won the race. It was the perfect day for me. You dream of those days in racing, and it wasn't for him, but yeah, it was good.
So now you're in the superbikes as well. You're in the superbike class as well. So is this the first time since you were younger you've raced against each other in the same class? Wait, at British level?
Apart from 2017 or 18, 2 years after that, we both raced in Superbike, but I had a pretty disastrous year that year.
Was that your WD Fireball situation?
That was another disastrous year, Dom. That was 2 I've had.
Oh, you're ticking them off nicely. Yeah, there you go.
I like to have big comebacks after my downfalls. So 2018, I was with Motor Rapido and Taz was with McCams, and I was just scared of Taz, so I moved out of the class because he was on form.
Because you're McCams. Like, I've only known you through McCams with the 600 you were with it. You're very loyal to the cause, which is great to see in motorsport. You know, you're like the James Hillier, the BSB paddock.
Yeah.
So when did that relationship start?
So I won the British Supersport Championship in 2016. And yeah, just touching on that, Chrissy. When you said I went out to prove a point, I was more motivated to win that race than winning the championship, because everyone that year, Brad, I get along really well with Brad and I've been friends with him for years, but everyone was saying, oh, if Brad had won this, he'd done that, he would have been fighting for the championship. And so I was just doing what I had to do to win the British Championship. And then when I won, or Westy crashed in that last race, I won the championship. At that point, I could have gone, oh, I don't even need to go back out now, I can just sit in the garage and watch. But I was that determined to go out and try and beat Brad, so it was like the icing on the cake, really, to go out and win that. So anyway, at that round...
Glad you got that off your chest.
Yeah, it was really
boiling.
It was really bugging me.
So any of the critics have that.
Exactly, Chrissy. No,
we should have called this the therapy box, not Chase the Racing. This is brilliant.
So I've been battling with Westy pretty much all year, and then Steve Rogers, who's my team manager now, who owns Raceways Yamaha, he sponsored me in 2014 and 2015, I think. And then when it got to Supersport, he was like, oh, can't really sponsor you because you're going to be racing against me. So I've always had a really good relationship with Steve. And then I was trying to go World Supersport at the end of 2016. Didn't quite happen. So I still didn't have a ride going, or after the last round, really. So the end of the last round, Steve Rogers came up and he was like, oh, I'd like to have a chat with you. And I heard they were going Superbike. So I thought, oh, maybe he wants to go Superbike. It wasn't something I was interested in because I still felt... I'd only done 1 year at British Supersport, so I didn't feel ready to go to Superbike. So he basically rang sort of a couple of days after. They'd sort of had an agreement with James Westmoreland riding their Supersport bike for the year after. It was like a big thing. They were going to Superbike, having McCams as title sponsor, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, McCams, Tina and James from McCams, who obviously still sponsor the team now, they wanted a sort of a young... not saying Westy's old, but a younger rider to sort of fight for the British Supersport Championship. And I didn't have a World Supersport option, or I did, but they weren't an option I was willing to take. And then so I decided to ride them with then the view to do a year in British Supersport and then ride in Superbike the year after. So you said I was loyal, Dom, but I did 3 rounds and then I sort of flicked my cams and went to Moto2. But it was a bizarre situation because I'd done 3 rounds, won the 6 races, and then got this Moto2 offer. But after the 6th race, sort of had a conversation with Steve saying that he wanted me to test the Superbike with an eye to riding it in 2018, which was always sort of the agreement. And so he was going to get me tests on it, and I was going to be riding it a lot, or have some tests on it during the year. But obviously I went to Moto2, so they were obviously gutted because they were due. Well, there was only 3 rounds, but I had a good points lead already, so they were maybe going to win their first British Championship. And then I went to Moto2, and then when the Moto2 thing sort of was up in the air a little bit, there was sponsors were pulling out, and it all got a little bit messy. Who did they have? Oh, they had Ellison and Michael Laverty riding that year, and they wanted new riders. And then I got approached. Alton Park, it was one, just happened to be a weekend off for me, and I got a phone call on the Saturday from Dad saying, "Oh, Steve wants to talk to you tomorrow. Can you come up to Alton?" So I got in Mum's Nissan Micro and drove to Alton Park, and
with me cape on, I'm on the way.
And I got there, and then basically just agreed that I'd ride for them. So I say loyal, but yeah.
Well, I painted a better picture of you just 5 minutes ago.
It did all work out, and obviously at the time in British Supersport, you were absolutely dominating. So the rest of that year, it looked like you would have taken the title, but you probably wouldn't have learned anything that you didn't already know at the beginning of the year, where at least with Moto2 you're riding against the best riders in the world, that opportunity to learn more experience, so that when you did come back to McCam's in Superbikes, you obviously...
Yeah, that's what I tried to tell them, but they didn't quite agree with that.
but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, it did, and it definitely made me a better rider. As I said before, that the bikes were very similar from Moto2 to Superbike, so it worked out quite good. So I don't think they can complain now.
This is a totally vague question. Sorry, Chris is the one who's got structure and obviously how this interview goes, and I just totally rip it apart. Nothing will ever change. Exactly, that's it. So, what would your dream ride be on a bike?
I was going to say, you need to...
Let's clear that up on a bike.
For me, it would be a factory world Superbike ride, definitely.
Right?
Not MotoGP.
I'd love to go to MotoGP, but I think...
We're talking dream here, son.
Yeah, dream. Well, if it was a dream, then
go
obviously a factory ride in MotoGP, but I think a realistic dream would be a factory world Superbike ride.
No, brilliant.
Cinetic BMW every day of the week.
You kiss ass. You don't even have a hoodie, man. He'll do anything for clothing, this lad. Anything.
We sort of touched on it in 2018. You started on the Ducati, and then you ended up riding for Michael, and that was the beginning of the relationship with like the Bathams team and stuff, which then went on to be really good last year. Good chance at the championship, like you against Cooper, some great race wins, and so like obviously some great memories. Did you enjoy your time coming back to Superstock?
I loved every minute of it. The start of 2018 on the Superbike just didn't quite work out with Moto Rapido. A great bunch and great bike, but it just didn't suit me for whatever reason. So I just stopped enjoying it, and it was at the same time as me not enjoying it, Michael had a spare bike to ride in Superstock, so I ended up just by pure chance thinking 2016 was a great year. I was loving my racing, loved riding. Let's just go back to having fun on a bike and worry about the rest after. So the first weekend with Michael, I think the first session I was nowhere. I was like 30th maybe, but then by morning warm up I was fastest. So it was just like
just getting your mojo back.
Yeah, smile back on my face. Loved riding a bike again, and just proved to myself that I could ride a bike, because you start doubting yourself, and there's plenty of doubters everywhere else. And I thought, no, I can ride a bike, and just loved riding it. And by the end of the year, I won the last race of the year with Michael. Agreed to do a deal for the year after, and last year was by far my most enjoyable season racing. Even though I loved 2016 because I won the championship, but last year was just, even though I didn't win the championship, I gave it every single bit I had, every weekend. Some weekends we won, and as an adult, I think you can appreciate it a bit more, because when I was younger, you just want to win, and it's all about winning. But even the days where I finished second to Cooper, I thought, well, I did everything we could today. He was just better than us, whether it was his bike or the combination of him and his bike. And that's all you can do. And we got to the end of the year, and I gave it everything I could. We even swapped bikes with 2 rounds to go to get on the new BMW. And that's where Michael was great. He just, whatever it took, we were going to try and win the championship. So we sort of came to the conclusion that if the points stayed the same, because at the start of the year, Cooper was better than me and he'd got a bit of an advantage. But then in the middle of the year, I got on a bit of a roll, and I won, I think it was like 2 out of 3 races, and then it was 3 out of 4. And I thought, right, I'm in with a shout now, and we're clawing back. But then it sort of leveled out, and it was like he'd win a race, then I'd win one, and then so we weren't really gaining any ground. So the new BMW had come out at that point, but Andy Reid was struggling with it, and we weren't really sure if it was a bike to be on. So they got one for me to test, and in all honesty, I did the test, and I was a second off what I'd done on my other bike, but it did feel good. There was something that felt good about it. Potential, yeah. And I just said, let's risk it and go for it. So even on the Thursday night before, and even after the Friday free practice, the first day I rode it, we were still like, I'm not sure whether we should ride this. Mm-hmm. But we went for it, and that was the first weekend I actually qualified on pole, because outright speed, Cooper was faster than me in every qualifying session pretty much. And that weekend was like, right, I've got this now, we can take it to him. And it just didn't quite work out. By pure, we'll call it bad luck or whatever, we were 0.1 of a PSI, which is nothing.
Oh, that rule.
Yeah.
So a lot of people won't actually know about this rule, but this year they brought in a controlled tyre pressure. So obviously everyone's got to run the same Pirelli tyres, and then basically the lower tire pressure you get more like sort of squish and sort of more grip, but then it sort of tears the tire. And at a few tracks like Silverstone National and Thruxton, it was tearing the tire and it was becoming a safety issue, a little bit like Phillip Island and World Superbike. So the Pirelli brought in this minimum tire pressure so that on the grid, it was something like 8 random riders get checked before every race, and if you were, there was no tolerance whatsoever. If you said like 0.1 over, you had to wheel the bike off, quickly pump your tyres up, get it to the right thingy, and then you could start at the back of the grid.
Hold on. Each tyre gauge will surely read different though.
It's valuable. It's calibrated.
We've got a stern nod here. Yeah.
I mean, they're
cleverer than you think, Dom.
It's like proper expensive things and they calibrate them, but you can go down to Pirelli and calibrate every round. You can calibrate your tyre pressure
to theirs, right?
But
if you're chucking at someone because they're pissing you off and it breaks,
it isn't as simple as people think though, because obviously if you set off from your garage, take your tyre warmers off, instantly your tyres get cooler and your tyre pressure starts to decrease. So if you say have like a really slow out lap, you're letting your tyre pressures cool and there's a risk that your tyre pressures might drop. So it's not as simple as like, it's not like cheating. You have to predict before you go out how much it's going to fall by, so that on the grid it's quite a bit of a ball ache for everyone. And it's not one of those things that if you get checked and you're out, it's not like you haven't done it, like Smith's Racing got done, loads of Superbike teams got done, and obviously you were really unlucky then as well.
The problem with it is the rules are the rules, and that's it. It's black and white. If you're under, believe me, when they plug that thing in, no matter how long you stare at that for, it doesn't go up. Once it's up, it's not going to increase any more than that. And it was just, sometimes I think championships are meant to be. 2016 it was meant to be. There was lots of things that went my way, and that year that was it. It was down to that race, and
still that race still turned into a bit of a positive. So starting from the back of the grid, you worked your way through and put like a ridiculous lap in at the end of the race, taking the Superstock lap record, which was a phenomenal lap time. And we were down at Rutter's place last week, and he was saying that
you were useless.
The bike's settings were all wrong for that race as well, so it makes it even more impressive. Did you feel like once you'd got the new BMW tune tuned to your liking, did you feel like it was worth was it definitely a forward step from the old model?
Yeah, well, that was the daft thing about that rule is, so then on the grid, they pull you off the grid. I went into pit lane, they literally get a compressor out. We had a compressor, went brrr, put a load of air in it, and we have no idea what that tyre pressure was, but it would have been a lot higher than anywhere near the limit. And I went out and broke the lap record with loads of air in it. So that's the annoying thing with it, that it could have been anything.
Did you know that at that time, that they just jammed air? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I was so angry. I couldn't even speak. I had my visor down. I wasn't aware. They just pat me on the back.
That's what I mean. But if someone said to you, right, I've jammed another 20 PSI in, good luck, son.
Well, it wasn't quite 20 PSI.
No, but I'm saying in theory, though, that would get in your head. Would that get in your head, or would you just scan? It is what it is.
I was just
desperate to get on the track.
Yeah, I just thought, get me back on that track. And stupidly, as a bike racer, you never, until it's over, it's not over. And I thought, well, something will happen, I'll get back.
And do you know, with that race as well, the front runners are kind of lucky that Taylor ran onto the grass on the first lap. Otherwise, you probably would have ended up on the podium. Because I think you'd made up something like 10 or 15 places around half the lap, and then ran onto the grass, went back to last place, then worked back up to. Did you finish like 5th or something?
Something like that. Yeah.
Suddenly, back markers aren't his friend.
Yeah. The problem I had in that race was, so then you just like
it's tight getting past the open park as well. There's not many.
And we ride tiny little 125s in our back garden all the time, and it's like Rubbin's Racing in our back garden. It doesn't matter the size of the gap, you just go for it and nerf people out of the way. And
is that where you got your inspiration?
I'm glad you brought this up. I can't wait for this bit. No,
we'll come on to it after. We've got to explain what you're saying.
You've got time to prepare yourself for this bit.
There was a tiny gap there, and when you're coming through.
Oh, sorry, I've got a gap.
When there's gaps like that, you just constantly, when you're at the front and you're racing with people your speed, you know exactly where they're going to be. But because I was riding with lads that wouldn't normally be at the front, at the back, I just wasn't expecting them to slow up so much. So I sort of went for a gap, and then suddenly there was no gap, and it was Milo Ward, who's a fairly solid lad, and there was only one winner in that battle, and it wasn't me. So I went flying off the track. But that bike was it's all ifs and buts. But if you started the season with that bike, it would have been a different year. I'm not saying I would have won the championship, but
Yeah.
I would have liked to have had another go at it with that in different circumstances. But that's what.
And
what
luckily,
it was.
sort of staying on that bike. Obviously, I know it's a superbike, but at the end of the year, you got sort of promoted to it's now Cinetic, but back then it was Tyco BMW. Managed to finish the season back in superbikes, and it certainly looked like you'd sort of got your mojo back in superstock and carried that into the top class. And you did not get many rounds, but the rounds that you did, you like certainly proved yourself.
Well, that's the thing with bike racing. Sometimes things are just meant to be. And had I've maybe won that race or finished on the podium, the championship would have gone on to the next 2 rounds. But because I lost the championship that weekend, that was it. And Glenn Irwin left Tyco at the time, Cinetic, and that freed up an opportunity for me to ride a superbike that was just a bit better than my superstock bike, the exact same bike, it had the same suspension, the same everything, which is all I've ever wanted to do. I just wanted to ride a superbike that I knew suited me. It was something I was confident on. I didn't have to have some mad setting that I wasn't sure what it was going to do. And sure enough, I went all right. I was top 10 all weekend and top 3 in the wet again.
Do you ride your stock 1000 full whiskey, like no traction, nothing? So that transition from traction saving you to getting on a superbike where you'll be fully used to that now, and it's...
Yeah, that what was leading up to that weekend, it was forecast a bit of rain, and I thought, great, this is just going to be the worst thing ever. I've got to ride a superbike with more horsepower, no electronics, because the good thing about the new BMW is the electronics are so good. At that point, Alec, bless him, didn't really know what he was doing. He'll happily admit that he didn't know what he was doing, but now he's got into it. I think next year in Superstock, sorry Chrissy, the BMW will be quite a good bike. So then I went into Donington with no electronics, and it was going to be wet at Donington Park, which is one of the worst tracks to ride in the rain because it's slippy in random places. And the first session was wet, and I thought, great. They even went and put a GoPro on my bike. I thought, if I'm going to crash, it's going to be a wet Donington Park with a camera on your bike, because that's when it happens. And I just sort of rode around, and it became quite easy. It was easier for me to ride a bike with no traction control, because you can actually feel what it's doing, and you understand. You open the throttle, and it goes
Like 1 to 1. Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I ride with electronics, sometimes I think I lose out a little bit because I then open the throttle. I never commit because I don't trust the computer. They don't always work. Sometimes it does go wrong, and that's always in the back of my mind.
Speaking of that, we had Richard Cooper on the podcast a while ago, and he was talking about...
He'll be listening right now, so if you want to get any pops in, go for it.
He was talking about your crash and Michael's crash at Donington was... we're basically talking about the split throttle thing, and he said that was to blame for both of you crashing. Yeah, because
he's been waiting for an excuse. Now you've given him. He's like, yeah,
he did say that. And is it something like it opens at a certain lean angle, so suddenly you were going around the corner in like damp, and then it suddenly give you a load more power and flicked you off or something?
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm not clever enough to understand it, but all I know is I was riding around quite comfortably with you and Richard Cooper, thinking, oh, we might have a win today. And then the next thing, I was in the back of an ambulance thinking, what the...
Looking back on that, I was so lucky because I'd passed you the corner before. Yeah. No, is it McLean's?
McLean's, yeah.
McLean's.
You
and
just
then
added the pressure in. Just
trying to keep up with you.
I seen that happen. And obviously it totally snookered Jackson and Lardy, because they both ran onto the grass, which gave me like a massive gap. So, so thanks. I know you didn't mean I know you didn't mean to, but thank you.
Yeah.
But you would have been used for a long time with no traction control, not like going from 600 straight into big bikes.
Yeah, I've never ridden with traction control.
Proper bloke, there you are.
It's just all in the hand back in the day. No, I've never ridden with traction control, so it's obviously I don't have any experience of it, but I can see where he's coming from because it looked nasty when you did land on the floor.
There we go. Right. Now to it. Brace yourself, young'un.
I think I've got symptoms. I might leave.
Well, your brother's got a mask, so he'll get you on. It's fine. Let's take a deep breath and go. No, there wasn't a gap.
Going back, so it was the first round last season, and after pre-season testing, both yourself and Jason were like red hot. The Yamahas looked amazing. Silverstone first round, fastest all weekend, and then first race it was basically you and Jason battling for the lead. Nice little gap to Josh Elliott. Came down to the second last corner, and you could see yourself sort of teeing up, and usually you would go up the inside there, but Jason looked like he'd taken the defensive line and was running pretty hot, so you moved across to the outside, Now, at the
Why?
point...
Hold on. Why are you explaining it? I want to know from his point.
Now,
No, he's explaining it right. Yeah.
So you're anticipating him just running slightly offline, and you can just
Yeah.
edge up like a little pass like you would
Like-
do in
like
the
a
back garden.
classic Chrissy Raz. Well, I love that. He went, you just doing a little oop. How many times have I seen Chrissy Raz do a oop? Sorry.
So
People running after his dad in pit lane. I've seen it.
right. So all right.
Chrissy
Right.
knows where I'm coming from.
Right. All right. So pretty much, Chrissy's just kissed your arse there for 2 seconds. Right. So
At that point, is what was going through your head, and looking back on it, is do you back that your decision to go through with it and go on, talk?
No, I don't regret what I did, but I'd basically done 30 laps around Silverstone. We'd obviously both been fast all weekend. Jason wanted to win as much as I wanted to win. I think he had a bit of motivation coming away from Honda, which was a bike that probably wasn't the most competitive thing, and he wanted to prove a point, really. So I understood we're trying to win a race. We get paid to win races. So we had a gap to Josh Elliott. Not all the race, but it slowly became a little bit bigger. But what happened for me, I made a mistake with 2 or 3 laps to go, and he sort of like broke me a little bit. So I had to try really, really hard to get back on him. And I thought, I've just like busted my balls, nearly crashing, trying to catch him back up. For me, just to catch him back up and sit behind him, I thought, well, I don't want to do that because I may as well have just backed off and taken the point. So I caught him back up. The idea, which was the plan in my head, was to get a run on him down the back straight and try and pass him, but I didn't quite manage that. And then when he went into Brooklands and that goes into Luffield, I think I was the one sat on the bike, and it's easy for me to say it because obviously I'm going to be biased, but I wouldn't have gone for a gap. I've never not done that. I know you have, Chrissy, but no,
This is like Dangerous Riders Anonymous.
I tell you what, I've never
Oh my
had
God,
never
that's
had
brilliant.
one penalty point on my license. and
Oh,
I've
wait,
got
wait,
first
Stuart
to
Higgs.
first
Stuart Higgs. Stuart Higgs has been on the pod. He'll be listening to this now, going right. I'm going to mark him down. But no, don't like we've talked about it loads on the pod. And the best thing is, it, like Chrissy comes back to the same point every time. That was the epitome of racing.
Yeah.
At that split, you are talking. The whole world can see it from a mile off that you're going for that decision, and from the world outside, it looks wrong. But you are making decisions at racing like that, and it was brilliantly entertaining.
What I would say to
It was just entertaining.
it's easy to be an armchair critic and sit back and like say this, you shouldn't have done that, or I would have done this, or whatever. But at that moment, nobody else can be in your shoes other than you. And obviously,
Yeah.
you've proved over the years that you aren't a dirty rider. That's
No.
not. It's not like if you did that like every weekend, then you would start to question like what risks you're taking. But at the end of the day, you went for it, and that's what racing's all about. At the end of the day, people want to see head-to-heads. You know, if the whole season you followed somebody around and finished second to them, you know, like that,
You wouldn't
the
have a
whole,
job.
The whole
Yeah.
BSB, the whole you know, like the viewing figures and stuff. That's people don't want to see that. People want to see. I personally love racing when the two people hate each other. Like when there was a rivalry with you and Hutchie. Like when
Who do you hate, Chrissy?
Ben Wilson and Alistair Seeley were going at it. That year in Supersport, the whole paddock went silent for the Supersport race
Yeah.
because everyone was glued to it.
Yeah.
And that's what people look back and remember. You know, like the Brogan Seeley moment.
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like that. It's
yeah.
like, and people will be talking about that moment for years. So
Yeah, it was obviously unfortunate because one, he's my teammate, and two, he went down. But he's over it now, and we're all right friends, and we're teammates at the end of the day. So we've got to get on with each other.
You see, at that moment, that's come and gone, right? It's the sheer utter politics that happens behind closed doors. You could just see it. Your dad can hold his composure like a true professional, because his eyes lit up and he went. he just shut down immediately and went, "Don't be biased." His brain just went into full like,
It must be
what am I going to do?
It must be so surreal watching your son win his first British Superbike race and be like, don't smile, don't smile, don't celebrate. But inside you must be like, fuck, get it.
That's what it was like, and everyone sat on the sofa had their own opinion, whether they were professional racers, ex-professional racers, or just the average BSB fan. So everyone had their own idea of what happened, and people said, "Oh, he went on the inside curb," and like, I know that didn't happen. Obviously, we made contact. He went down, and I stayed on and won my first race. So it was a bit bittersweet that Dad was celebrating inside, but thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be professional about this."
In your head,
We did mint, by the way. What's happened here? Something's gone wrong.
Feedback. I've just got a new recorder.
That's
so
one of his major fans hacking this, just deleting it.
Dad's texting him going, get in.
In your head, were you visualising that as you were going to show Jason a wheel and hoping he would sit up and sort of let you through? Was
Yeah.
that,
Well,
like, make a gap type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. You tried showing him a wheel and hopefully he'd lift, but he's just led a British Superbike race longer, a race he's led longer than ever. He's only won one in his career. So if his younger teammate that's in his second year in British Superbike shows him a wheel, then
At the last corner.
at the last corner on the last lap of a 30-lap race, then of course you're not going to lift. And even if I was in his position, I wouldn't lift. But sometimes those situations backfire. The rider shows you a wheel, you lean on him, and the rider that's shown you a wheel then crashes. It doesn't always work out like that. I was alongside him enough that he was still leaning over and he fell off. So it was obviously unfortunate, and I'm saying like Chrissy now, obviously, but it was a little bit of tension after that.
Did you get any awkward laughs?
No, not so much. No one was laughing about the situation. Chrissy. I came back. I did all the podium. Everyone was telling me I'd won it, and I was convinced I hadn't. And then I went up and got told that I hadn't won it. There was a 3-second penalty, and I ended up losing it by 0.017. Not that I know that. And then went back, shook everyone's hand, said I was sorry. Some people didn't want my apology, but I just did the right thing and went out in race 2 and just did my best and won the race. So yeah,
it's funny with at the time of, like, let's say Andy. Can you remember when Andy Owen first got a Superbikes and he went down and torpedoed both the Honda riders out? So at that time, the whole Honda garage is like hating Andrew Owen. The next thing, they're signing them and he's win race for them, and everyone forgets. And with racing, like 1 minute you'll be you'll be riding for Bill Base and arch enemies with the Taz lot, and then the next minute and that is racing, and you've just got to kind of move on. And
I honestly think it was the best moment of BSB racing in my life. At the end of the day, no one's dead. It was brilliant. It was entertaining. People talk about it forever. So suck it up, enjoy it, and love it.
Yeah. Have both of you been taken out in the past?
By the sounds of it.
Yeah. There's no real. The only sort of contact you ever get is with Chrissy.
Yeah. I don't think I've been taken out. I've been hit, but I've never crashed.
Josh Elliott took me out. That was sore.
Yeah, that was the same place actually.
Yeah.
That's actually incredible, considering you're all at the sharp end.
Touch wood.
Touch wood for the love of God. But that you just expect that more, if you know what I mean.
I got wiped out twice. I've been wiped out quite a few. I was got twice last year. Once by Leon G-Cock. That was just from behind. I just took my bike, and the worst thing was as well, my bike didn't crash. So my bike went flat out in the wall, like smashed all the front end and stuff. And then a few rounds later, Levi D knocked us off from behind. But the worst thing about that was, as he hit us, as I was going through midair, the impact dislocated my shoulder. You know how painful it is just to be out, but then to land and roll through the gravel with a dislocated shoulder. I was literally
know that more than anyone. I think.
Yeah, it was literally like the worst thing. But
I can remember watching you in Stock 600. I crashed. I went back to the garage. I think you were running at the front. I think you might even break the lap record on the Haribo bike. Behind Mason. Behind Cadwell. You came over the mountain. You tipped into Hull Bench, just like the most graceful crash ever, and then you stood up holding your shoulder. I'm like, no way is he just dislocated his shoulder from that. But
I had to get an operation, I think, at the end of that year actually to get fixed up. But it got to the point where, like, literally if I sneezed it was popping out type of thing. So but I just had another operation beginning of this year, which is I've got like a good sized scar. But you'll know, obviously I've seen the pictures. Shoulder just every month you're just doing loads of physio and trying to get back, and it's one of those things, but
Corona's helped you
massively. Been really lucky. Anyway,
I was about to say, before we go on, obviously it's a kind of split down the middle with road racing. So what's any thoughts, or is it an immediate no with road racing? Or
I absolutely love road racing. I'm a big fan of it. I've been to watch the TT about 6 or 7 times in a row, I think I went, and it's just not for me. I'm got no interest in doing it. But the respect I've got for every TT racer, because I've been and watched everywhere. But you, Dom. I've seen the front guys at TT. Just kidding. No, every TT racer, no matter where they finish, it's mind blowing for me, and I love watching it. And as you're about to see in this PlayStation game, this is why I know.
Well, the thing that did it for both of us, really. It was when we watched that TT film. I can't remember what year it was. It came out.
10. The Guy Martin one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went to the cinema to watch it, and Mum basically walked out and said, if you ever want to do that, I will be lying in the road. So Mum's so good with our racing and understands it all, but she doesn't understand...
yeah, so really, we're not allowed because Mum says we're not
Oh,
allowed.
right.
Yeah.
No, but at the end of the day, you know, it takes a bigger... Like, a lot of people would come on here and just go, oh, yeah, one day, and feed out the macho bullshit. But no, it takes a bigger person to go, tell you what, it's not for me. You know what I mean?
They're the people I hate, the ones that go, yeah, I'll do it. Well, do it then.
That's it.
Just get on and do it. There's no one stopping you. Like, I might. Well, just do it.
That's like road racing, not like Northwest, is that ever? Was it literally just, not for me, road racing? No, which is fair enough.
The Northwest was another one I went to watch.
You like the bloody anchor bar, young, and I've seen you more on there than me.
What? Never heard of it. Moving swiftly on. Speaking of lockdown,
have you ever been in the anchor? Lock-ins, aye. I've never seen you in the... You're the professional here.
I've never been to Northwest 200.
Are you not?
No.
Why don't you take your little brother to the anchor bar? There's an education.
Yeah.
I tell you what, he's in Ibiza. God, Bennett. Right, go on then. So you're Northwest.
I went to the Northwest to watch, and Ben Wilson at the time was top-level short-circuit racer, and he hurt his leg at the Northwest.
Made a right mess of it, didn't
and
he? Yeah.
I was there for that, and I just thought, that could happen to anyone. It was so easy for that to happen, and I love my short-circuit racing, and I'd have happily done the Northwest at that point, because it was an easier race to learn. There's less corners, and you can just go there, and like Richard Cooper proved, if you're good enough, you should be competitive. And that, when I saw that, I just thought, God, that's not for me. I'll just
fair enough.
Sit and watch it.
Fair enough. Well, we've just introduced this new game since we've had the studio done, and basically Sector 4 on... Is it just called the TT game?
I know. Product placement here. We're gonna get screwed. We're gonna get sued at some point anyway. Mark Reynolds gave us this.
Sector 4, and we're gonna be Lee Johnson. Who wants to go first?
I was about to say flip a coin.
Taylor can go first. Hold this.
Go on then.
Only one winner in this, and it's not going to be me.
Oh, here we go.
Some of us have got jobs, Dom.
Yeah, me.
What job?
Me. What jobs have you got?
Things.
Wheeling
and dealing.
All right, Del boy. Right.
How do you both keep busy through like the lockdown and stuff? Have you been up to much?
Chaz is just on the PlayStation all day.
No.
So have you got any... Right, we're going to ask you questions during this, so it's a bit like... Right, if you're going to pick a trade, what trade would you go for?
A trade... I'd like to be a builder. I'm
Like
into
to
my
be a
houses.
builder?
Well, building houses, so just...
I'd be a carpenter, I think.
A carpenter?
Yeah.
All right. There we go then.
Right, Dom, you need to ask me that question again when I'm not on...
No, that's the whole point of the game, right? We have a crash here, and you do not get a reset, mine. So there you go. The whole point of asking these things. So it's a bit like, I'm just thinking of like daft questions. You know,
playing as Lee.
Surely that's not Lee Johnson.
I think Lee's...
He's too big.
He's tucked in for a start. Lee never
Go
gets
on, you
tucked
got
in.
any questions, Chrissy? He's making a right hashtag of it. Hashtag? Oh, you've been done by Raoul. So... Like,
I reckon Lee's been to the anchor bar the night before.
God, Bennett, this is totally fair. We had loads of questions at Rutter here. I'm just going to ask you the same questions. When did he lose your virginity?
While we're on the subject
when did he
of
lose your
Rutter,
virginity? Oh, go on then. Why you got on Rutter? What you got on Rutter?
12.
Okay, 12, right, champion. Right.
No, Rutter is a dark horse on the PlayStation because I've heard from a little birdie that he is on the PlayStation most days. So
right. Oh, he lied to us.
Now, he is the chief mind game man.
Really?
That's the one thing I've learned from Michael Rutter. Dom, he got right in your head at London Excel show with tyre pressures.
That's dishing out the portions. But I tell you what, he looked at us in the eye. He looked us clean in the eye and said, "I don't play PlayStations." So he's a liar, and he's top of the leaderboard with a 138, and he's sadly Yeah, hold on. I think you're still on to beat Lee Johnson's time. What's Lee Johnson's time?
148.
148, and he's a...
God, he needs to
this is
change
close.
His
36 and the second place man. There you go.
If you just keep that on, I'll get a picture.
We're gonna get a picture, right? Go on. So
I am gonna get a
how do you think that went for your brother then?
I don't think that was too bad.
Oh God, you're not feeling very hopeful here. Then there we go then.
I think Taz will be the man here.
I'm
not sure he'll beat Rutter because
no.
Rutter's a right. I'm gonna have to put like some sort of handicap on here, like a lion handicap.
Yeah, go for restart. Yeah. Same questions for Taz. Look,
but that's pretty much. No, we've got carpenter. Some slightly carpenter. He's already got.
I don't know why I'd be a carpenter. Mum keeps telling me I need to get a trade whilst in lockdown, but
You know, just
Just goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah,
I don't know
fair
how I'm
enough
going to
then.
learn a trade.
I don't know if I was. I don't know. I'd probably be a joiner.
I tell you what, I have noticed in lockdown, every single time I put my Facebook or whatever on, I get a picture of you in your Cinetic BMW with a like a sponsored ad.
Oh,
for,
perfect.
the money well spent. There we are.
for
Captain cover.
Captain cover.
Oh,
every
right.
single
Oh,
time.
hold
I
on,
put
bit
on
of-
Facebook.
really?
What is? Yeah, every single
Well,
time, no matter
A
what.
bit of hush. Bit of hush. Here we go.
No, you're right. You can keep talking.
No. Oh, we are. We're just going to ask you the questions.
I've got a plug after this.
Oh, so he's already admitted that he wants to be a carpenter. So we might as well. He's on it. Yeah. Hold on. So this is.
I think we're on for.
Oh, he's.
Why
Oh,
did I
I'm actually in shock here. So when's
I
the last
just
time you?
squealed.
Have you ever? When's the last time you peed in the shower?
Pooed in the shower.
Poo, Jesus!
This morning.
This one. I'm running out. I'm actually amazed how good this lap's going here. So he's 40. Oh.
Do you go over at the TT to watch Taz?
I've been twice. Once me and Josh Waters and Dad got up early and drove there. And then last year, 2 years ago, flew there for like a day because I didn't have a lot of time. And my cams were there and I knew they weren't planning on going the year after. So,
Make the most of it.
yeah, went and, spent. I love it there, but yeah, it's not for me.
This is a hell of a lap. This
just
is a hell of a lap.
Sarah's cottage, and who's that in the luminous yellow?
Oh, it's the Spanish lap. I tell you what, he like first year at the Macau Grand Prix, he went into the side of the barrier.
I think you can.
And
pin it
how
from
on
here.
God's green earth he literally
You're
got
on
up
it,
and
yeah.
walked away. I have no idea. He just went like coming in the corner before Lisboa, absolutely flat stick. You ever been over to Macau, lads?
No,
You should
no,
be in a row. Oh, almost chucked it at the bank there. 37,
he
30.
changed the gearing.
How did Rutter beat that?
Bloody hell, 41.
Fair
Still
play.
Good.
Rutter,
I'll get
right,
another
you're a
picture
lion.
in a
You're a
second.
lion sod. You're a lion sod,
have
Rutter.
Have you been over to Macau?
You ever
No,
fancy-
you went to Thailand, didn't you? After.
I joined on the back of a trip because Lee Johnson and Gary had been to Macau, and then
Right.
I was sat at home bored, and they all went, "We're going to Thailand. Do you want to come?" And I was
Yep.
young, dumb, and full of energy. So I came over with those, and it was a good laugh. But no, I've never been to Macau.
Has your dad done road racing? Yeah.
He did
He-
the Northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His claim to fame is that he finished second to Joey, I think, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he? Bloody hell.
There we
Yeah.
go. There we go. But I think we're gonna have to we've got this game to go on next. That's the next port call,
we'll get
isn't
that,
it?
But for the podcast, we'll end here. But thanks very much for joining us.
No
And
worries.
we'll stick the this next game on YouTube, so it'll be on
Yeah.
our YouTube channel. Do you want any
He's got
any
a
plugs
plug.
for? Oh yeah.
He's got
Well,
a
my plug was is that advert there is by a company called Digitally Charged, which I'm actually part of now, who basically do those clever adverts that track you around the internet. So they find people on the internet. So if there's any company out there that wants some clever advertising,
And
Give
I can back
Digitally-
this up. I don't know why I'm getting followed, but
Because you
every
bump
single
people off the track every weekend. You
single
deserve
person, every
So-
single time I go on Facebook, that picture.
you'll be one
without-
of Captain Cover's targeted audience. So they're after young males,
good-looking young
good-looking
males.
lads, strong, hench. You'll be in all those categories. Fast, clever, maths teachers. You'll be in that category.
You're ticking every
Any
box.
now? Any plugs for your social medias, Instagram, all that type of stuff?
Yeah,
Well, I'm Taylor Mac 77 and
I'm
Taz is-
Tarran Mac 95. So
Fantastic.
yeah, thank you.
Oh, you
Just warning you. You know you've pulled up and plugged into the house, so Dad will have you
On
on
the
a meter.
meter.
Yeah.
what's the crack with merchant? I know you sell merchandise. Where do people find that?
That's all on our social media as well. You
Yeah.
don't have-
With the merchandise, I think we didn't want to just suddenly bring out our new range of t-shirts whilst in lockdown when we're not racing bikes. We didn't want to be like, oh,
Makes
we're
sense.
not earning money through lockdown. Everyone buy some t-shirts. So
we don't
We-
do it to
Face
make
masks.
money.
yeah, face masks instead. So we've even stopped that now. So when we do start racing again, we'll get some.
We don't really make
merch.
money out of t-shirts. Just if someone
good for
wants to
branding
show
and
us
stuff.
Yeah,
some
yeah.
support, then we like to have you as part of the team.
So
Yeah.
on, this interview's gonna keep going and going and going. Like, do you think we're gonna get going then? There's obviously word on the grapevine that it's gonna go from August, but obviously with all government and all that.
I
crap.
think if people doing podcasts stop going to people's houses,
not a
then-
chance.
No,
We've got Corona from Geordie Land in here.
no. Obviously, the rules are getting lifted slightly, but it seems to be going in the right
Fingers
direction.
crossed,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a bit of a plan I think that's going to be announced soon. So hopefully
Yeah,
something gets
this
put in
Wednesday.
place.
BSBO will make
Yeah.
the announcement. So
Yeah.
hopefully- I
Fantastic.
think maybe
But,
it's
yeah.
like a 6-round championship starting in August, but
Yeah.
it all
Just announce it now, Chris.
it all goes from
An exclusive here, there.
it all goes from like what's happening with the government and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah.
Hopefully we'll be on track soon.
Fantastic, man.
But thanks very much for your time anyway.
No
Really,
worries.
really
Thanks for
enjoyed
having
it.
us.
Cheers,
Thank
lads.
you.
Thank you.
Catch up soon.
Cheers.